My in-laws secretly drained my business account, and my mother-in-law smirked, "You shouldn't be working anyway." My husband agreed. I just smiled and said, "That's fine, because I took care of it." Moments later, they panicked when I built my business from the ground up. Late nights, early mornings, every dollar reinvested. It wasn't just work. It was security. It was mine. But my in-laws had different ideas. They thought family meant everything I earned belonged to them. My husband, Dorian, wasn't like this when we met. Or maybe he was, and I just didn't see it. He came from a family where men made the money and women took care of the home. His mother, Odessa, had never worked a day in her life. His father, Victor, had that old-school mindset that a man should control the finances. They were the kind of people who thought they deserved whatever they wanted, simply because they were family. At first, my business was nothing to them. A hobby. They thought I was just entertaining myself. But when it started doing well, when I started making real money, that's when things changed. Dorian started dropping little comments. "I don't understand why you need to work so much. We're comfortable." Comfortable? Because of me. I was paying for everything. Our house, our vacations, even his car. But he acted like my success was some kind of inconvenience. Then Odessa started pushing harder. She'd smile that fake, syrupy smile and say things like, "Women shouldn't have to worry about money. That's a husband's job." Victor backed her up. "Money should be shared. It's selfish to keep it all to yourself." It got worse every time I saw them. Little jabs about how wives should take care of their husbands, not the other way around. Like I wasn't already carrying all of them. I tolerated it for Dorian. But one day, I checked my business account and saw a transaction that made my stomach drop. The balance was nearly empty. At first, I thought it was fraud. I called the bank, shaking, ready to report it. But the woman on the phone was calm. Too calm. She told me the transfers were made legally, to our joint account. My heart stopped. That account was barely used. I kept my money separate. I only ever moved small amounts over for bills. I refreshed the page, praying I was seeing it wrong. I wasn't. They had taken nearly everything. I don't even remember getting in my car. One minute I was at home, staring at my computer screen. The next I was standing in the doorway of my in-laws' house. Odessa, Victor, and Dorian were sitting in the living room, drinking champagne. Odessa turned her head and smiled. "Oh, sweetie, you're just in time." We were celebrating. I felt like I had left my body, like I was watching the scene from above, disconnected from it all. Dorian smirked and leaned back against the couch. "We were going to tell you." "Tell me? Tell me?" Odessa let out a light laugh, like this was all some kind of joke. "You shouldn't be working anyway, dear. Now you don't have to." Victor nodded approvingly. "We're family. You trust family, don't you?" I couldn't speak. My hands were shaking. I wasn't sure if it was rage or shock. Probably both. They thought they had won. That's when I smiled. It was small at first, barely noticeable, but Odessa saw it. Her fake smile twitched for a split second. I pulled out my phone and tapped a few buttons. Dorian's phone buzzed. Then Victor's. Then Odessa's. All three of them pulled out their phones. I watched in real time as the color drained from their faces. Dorian looked up first. "What did you do?" I tilted my head. "Oh, you mean how I moved all the money back? Or how I reported every single transaction as unauthorized?" Odessa slammed her glass down so hard it splashed. "You can't do that." I crossed my arms. "I already did." Victor's face turned red. "You're making a big mistake." I took a step closer. "No, Victor. You made the mistake. You thought I was stupid. You thought I wouldn't notice. And now? Now you're going to pay for it." Dorian's hands were shaking as he stared at his phone. "But the bank said it was legal." I nodded. "It was legal." I leaned down, leveling my gaze with his. "Until I divorced you." The room froze. Odessa's mouth actually fell open. Victor looked like he had been slapped. Dorian choked on his own spit. You're not serious." I laughed. Dead serious. Then the panic set in. Odessa started screeching. Victor jumped up, ranting about how I was ruining the family. Dorian reached for my arm, his eyes wide, his voice desperate. I pulled my arm away, and I walked out. I didn't go home that night. There was no point. It wasn't my home anymore. Not really. Not since the moment Dorian decided I was nothing more than his personal ATM. I checked into a hotel, sat on the bed, and stared at the wall. My hands were still shaking. It wasn't fear. It wasn't even sadness. It was the weight of pure, burning fury pressing down on my chest, demanding action. Dorian called. I watched the screen light up. Decline. He called again. Then Odessa. Then Victor. I turned off my phone and breathed. I could have let it go. Could have just walked away with my money, my business, my clean escape. But something inside me snapped. They didn't deserve to get away with it. By morning I had a plan. When I turned my phone back on, the messages poured in. Dorian, we need to talk. Odessa, you're overreacting. You don't throw away family over money. Victor, you ungrateful little, delete. Then came the email from my lawyer. The divorce papers were filed. The joint account was frozen. But the best part? The fraud claim was under review. I smiled. I knew exactly what was coming next. It took less than 48 hours for the first cracks to show. I was sitting in a cafe downtown when I got the first call from Dorian's boss. I let it ring a few times before picking up. Hello. There was a pause. Then, in a careful, professional voice, the man said, Hi, this is Mark from Kessler and Company. I'm calling regarding your husband. Ex-husband. I took a sip of my coffee. What about him? Another pause. I understand there's been some financial confusion. There it was. Kessler and Company was my connection. They had helped me with my business, given me referrals, even backed some of my expansion plans. When Dorian quit his job last year, I had been the one to call in a favor to get him a new one. And now? Now his employer knew exactly what he had done. I don't know what he told you, I said, keeping my voice even, but the truth is, he and his parents stole a significant amount of money from my business. The bank is investigating it as fraud. Silence. Then, I see. I could hear the calculations happening on the other end of the line. They weren't calling me to help Dorian. They were calling because they wanted to know if he was a liability. Does that answer your question? I asked. A breath. Yes. Thank you for your time. Click. I smirked. Let's see how long he lasted without my name protecting him. Then came Odessa. She showed up at my office. Didn't even bother with security. Just stormed right in, stomping across the floor, like she owned the place. You little brat, she hissed, slamming her manicured hands down on my desk. How dare you? I leaned back in my chair. How dare I what? Odessa's face twisted in fury. You got Dorian fired. I blinked, then smiled. No, Odessa. Dorian got Dorian fired. Her lips curled. Do you know what you've done? You're ruining his life. He has nothing now. He lost his job, his accounts are frozen, and I raised a hand. Let me stop you there. He lost my money, my business, my trust. He made his choices. And now he's dealing with the consequences. Her hands clenched into fists. He's your husband. Not anymore. For the first time I saw it, fear. Not just anger. Not just frustration. Actual fear. Because for the first time, Odessa realized something. She wasn't getting anything from me anymore. No more vacations, no more money, no more security. She opened her mouth to say something, but my assistant stepped in. Ma'am, I need you to leave. Odessa glared at me like she wanted to claw my eyes out. But she turned and stormed out. Good. Let her feel it. Victor was next. Unlike Odessa, he didn't show up in person. He sent a lawyer. It was almost funny. Almost. I met them in a conference room, my own lawyer sitting across from me. The man Victor hired was old, stiff, and probably thought he could intimidate me. He slid a folder across the table. We're here to discuss a settlement. I picked it up and flipped through it. Then I laughed. Out loud. A settlement? I repeated. You're joking, right? Victor's lawyer didn't flinch. Your husband and his parents believe they are entitled to some compensation for the role they played in your business. I actually snorted. The role they played? You mean stealing from me? Victor's lawyer clasped his hands. It would be easier for everyone if you came to an agreement outside of court. I shut the folder. Pushed it back. Tell them they can take me to court. I dare them. Victor's lawyer blinked. I have bank statements, emails, text messages, call logs. You think a judge is going to side with a man who emptied his wife's business account without her permission? Victor's lawyer sat there for a long time. Then he sighed. I'll inform my client. Please do. I stood, smoothed my blazer, walked out. They wanted a settlement? They were about to get something a lot worse. I thought they'd take the hint. Thought they'd slink away and accept defeat. But people like them don't give up. They double down. It started with the house. Dorian wasn't on the deed. I had bought it before we got married, and I had made damn sure never to add his name. But that didn't stop him from trying. I got a call from my lawyer. You're not going to like this, she said. Dorian's trying to file for an occupational interest in your house. I actually laughed. He thinks he can fight for my house. He's claiming he contributed to its upkeep. That he lived there long enough to be entitled to stay. Oh, that was rich. Dorian never lifted a finger in that house. Didn't pay the mortgage, barely did any cleaning, wouldn't even change a light bulb. The man couldn't fix a leaky faucet without calling me to handle it. I clenched my jaw. What do? We fight it. But you need to get him out. Now. That was all I needed to hear. I drove straight to the house, parked in the driveway, and just sat there for a second, gripping the steering wheel. I had been avoiding this. Walking away had been easy. Coming back? That was different. I walked through the front door and there he was, sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone like he still belonged there. He barely looked up. Oh. So you decided to come home? I took a slow breath.
No, Dorian.
I came to get you out.
He scoffed.
It's my house too. I laughed.
No.
It's not. Your name isn't on it. Never was. That wiped the smirk off his face. We're still legally married. Not for long. I held up my phone. And I have a lawyer who says you need to leave.
Now.
He sat up, jaw clenching. Where am I supposed to go? I shrugged. That's not my problem. He stood, eyes dark. You're really gonna do this? After everything? I tilted my head. You mean after you stole from me? After you and your parents tried to gut my business? After you tried to take credit for everything I built? His fists clenched. I could see the anger in his face, the frustration, the desperation. But what could he do? Nothing. Because no matter how much he whined, the facts were simple. He had nothing. No money, no job, no house. I had everything. You can leave now, I said, crossing my arms. Or you can wait for the sheriff to come and drag you out. His face twisted, but he grabbed his keys, shoved a few things into a bag, and stormed out. Good. One problem down. But Odessa and Victor weren't done yet. The next morning, I got a call from my bank. Hi, Ms. Caldwell, the manager said, his voice hesitant. We wanted to verify some requests on your account. My stomach dropped. What requests? There was a pause. Then, we received a call this morning from your husband, Dorian Caldwell, asking to change the security settings on your account. I went cold. Excuse me? He tried to add himself as a co-owner. I gripped the phone so hard my fingers ached. And, what did you tell him? We denied it, of course. But I thought you should know. I let out a slow breath. Thank you. I hung up and sat there, shaking with rage. He was still trying. Even after losing his job, his house, his money, he was still trying to take more. I checked my email. Nothing from Dorian. Nothing from his parents. But something told me this wasn't over. I was right. That night, someone tried to break into my office. I got the security footage the next morning. The cameras showed a man in a hoodie, trying to force the lock. He didn't get inside. My security system scared him off. But it was clear this wasn't random. My stomach turned. Was it Dorian? Victor? I sent the footage to my lawyer.
To the police.
They told me they'd look into it. I wasn't waiting for them. I hired a private investigator. If they wanted to play dirty, I was going to dig up every single thing I could on them. It was time to end this. I wasn't sleeping much anymore. Every night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, heart pounding, waiting for the next thing. The next betrayal. The next stupid stunt from Dorian and his miserable parents. But I had my own plans now. I met with the private investigator I'd hired, an older guy named Roy. He was blunt, professional, and very, very good at his job. You were right, he said, sliding a folder across the table. They're desperate. I opened it and scanned the contents. Bank statements.
Debt.
Lawsuits. Odessa and Victor weren't as rich as they liked to pretend. They were bleeding money. Credit cards maxed out. Loans they couldn't repay. Then, buried beneath the financial disaster, a hidden lawsuit. I looked up, confused. What's this? Roy smirked. Victor borrowed money from a shady lender. A lot of money. He hasn't paid them back. He tapped the folder. They're suing him, but that's not the worst part. I frowned. What's the worst part? Roy leaned back. Victor put up collateral. My stomach twisted. What kind of collateral? Roy's grin widened. Your business. I froze. What? I whispered. Roy nodded. He forged some documents. Made it look like your business assets were his. If he doesn't pay up, they come after you. The room felt too small. The air, too thick. This wasn't just about greed anymore. This was theft. Fraud. A goddamn crime. A slow, creeping rage curled in my gut. They had tried to ruin me. I slammed the folder shut. Do we have proof? Roy grinned. Oh, sweetheart. We have everything. The confrontation, I planned it carefully. If Victor and Odessa wanted to pretend they were untouchable, I was going to tear them down publicly. The perfect opportunity came at a charity gala they were attending, one of those events where they pretended to be wealthy philanthropists while drowning in debt. I walked in wearing the sharpest dress I owned. A power move. A warning. The moment Odessa spotted me, her smile vanished. She turned to Victor, whispering furiously. Dorian was there too, sulking near the bar, watching me with a clenched jaw. I grabbed a champagne flute from a passing waiter. Took my time sipping it. Then, loud enough for everyone to hear, I said, Victor, how's the lawsuit going? The entire room went quiet. Victor stiffened. What the hell are you talking about? I smiled. Oh, the lawsuit. The one where you illegally used my business as collateral for a shady loan.
Gasps.
Murmurs. Odessa's eyes went wide. Victor laughed. A forced, shaky laugh. You don't know what you're saying. I pulled the folder from my purse and tossed it onto a nearby table. Oh, but I do. In fact, I have proof. People moved closer, whispering, eyes darting between us. Victor's face went red. Odessa grabbed his arm. We need to leave. I stepped in front of them. Not yet. Dorian finally spoke. You're making a scene? I turned on him. I'm exposing the truth. I pointed at Victor. Your father is a fraud. A thief. He tried to ruin me. My voice sharpened. And you? You stood by and let him. Dorian swallowed hard. He knew. Maybe he had known about the forged documents, but he knew they were trying to steal from me. And he had done nothing. Odessa's mask finally cracked. You wouldn't. Oh, I would. I leaned in. And I did. The bank, the lawyers, the lender, they all know now. Victor grabbed the folder, flipping through the pages. You have nothing. I pulled out my phone. Hit play. A recording. Victor's voice, crystal clear. If she finds out, we're screwed. Odessa's voice. She won't. She's too stupid to check. Silence. Victor's face drained of color. Dorian looked shaken. Odessa whispered. You recorded us? I smiled. I learned from the best. Victor's anger snapped. He lunged for my phone, but two security guards, my security, stepped between us. Odessa gasped. Dorian flinched. And then, Victor made his final mistake. He shouted, in front of everyone. We deserved that money. You owe us. You're just some greedy little. Cameras flashed. People filmed. And just like that, their reputation was gone. Victor and Odessa were sued. The lender went after them hard. The bank confirmed the fraud. The forged documents? Enough to press charges. Dorian?
Broke.
He tried calling me.
Texting me.
I ignored every message. Then one day he showed up at my office. I let him in.
He looked exhausted. Lost.
I messed up. I tilted my head. Which part? The stealing? The lying? The enabling?
He sighed.
I should have stopped them. I shrugged.
Yeah.
You should have. He hesitated. Do you think we could ever? I laughed.
Laughed.
He flinched.
No, Dorian.
We can't. You're not my problem anymore. He swallowed hard, looked away, then nodded. And just like that, he walked out of my life. Odessa and Victor lost everything. The house.
Gone.
The cars.
Sold.
Their social status. Completely destroyed.
Me?
I rebuilt. Expanded my business. Moved to a new city. Bought a gorgeous apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows. And I never looked back. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't hurt. I was free.